Hello, and welcome to the 100 Stories podcast. We made a commitment as an organisation to respond constructively to the Black Lives Matter movement. This means aiming to become more diverse, more inclusive, and support more Black-owned businesses. After a brief hiatus, we have returned to continue sharing the stories of Black entrepreneurs and hearing about their experiences of prejudice and journeys to success.
For today's episode, we'll be talking to Myles Jensen, one of the twin duo who co-founded For Fork's Sake and the most recent venture, Jensen and Jensen. Thank you, Myles, for joining us today. It is truly a pleasure to have you here to share your story with us. Would you like to explain further about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, firstly, thanks for having me here. So my name is Myles Jensen. As you said, I'm one half of J&J, my brother Bradley Jensen. And yeah, I'm a marketer. I'm a co-founder entrepreneur. I really kind of started my journey within the marketing world, what I would probably describe as quite unorthodox. I traditionally kind of came through the side door of the marketing world and not through the kind of main entrance. From a young age, I went to boarding school in Birmingham. My dad told me it'd be like Hogwarts. It definitely wasn't. I got sold the dream. But that really, from quite a young age, inspired me to have a lot of independence. Entrepreneurship was something that was quite key there. Ramen and Indomine was the best form of currency you could have in a school like that. And then from there, I always had a passion for art, business, and generally kind of, I don't want to say networking because that's such a premature thing to say. I was networking at 12 years old, but I always really enjoyed other people's company, meeting new people, those kind of experiences. I think when I look back, I come from quite a colourful background. So my dad's Danish, my mum's St. Lucian. Obviously nothing on you at the moment. So, but it was definitely quite a colourful background growing up in that type of environment. I think also my mum's deaf. So from a young age, I was forced upon really to be able to communicate effectively with adults. It's quite difficult as 5 years old trying to return a DVD player in House of Fraser and trying to explain it to your mum when she's pissed off and it's difficult, so you learn very quickly. I think all of those attributed to kind of who I am today and what J&J is. In terms of leaving school, I left school, I travelled Spain for a bit, came back and then ended up going to Liverpool and studying marketing there. And I think I've never been an academic. That's never really been my forte. I've never really enjoyed academia like that. But really it enabled me to see actually there is marketing. Marketing is a real thing.
Yeah.
And really starting to learn the kind of constructs of marketing, consumer buying behaviour, all of this different type of stuff, and all of that again attributed to what I wanted to do. So yeah, it was quite an up and down journey. Throughout school, throughout uni, childhood and whatnot. But once I left uni, I, quite similar to you, obviously I was at campus as well. I joined Smirnoff as a brand ambassador, so you're getting quite a traditional route into that. I just remember watching them, and I know the guys quite very well now, Rich Booth and Alex Thorne. I just remember them coming into White City, that's where Diageo's head office was, and just like, yeah, that's definitely what I want to be doing. I just liked the way that there was something that was really interesting, and you're kind of mixing a cool brand like Smirnoff, and seeing how that can work with students, and actually how powerful the student demographic and market is.
Definitely.
So yeah, once I finished uni, I kind of WhatsApped everyone for a job, and they got back to me, and I said, I'll take it, bingo. And that's kind of how I ended up in Leeds.
Yeah. And so how come you decided to study marketing? Because I think you said and I also like looking at your LinkedIn and stuff, I know you said that you and your brother both went to the same boarding school and that you were already there, like entrepreneurs, like selling ramen, reselling and stuff like that. And so how come, what made you want to study business or like marketing more specifically at university?
I think from a young age, particularly when I was in school, it must have been about year 9 or something. I remember thinking like, when I'm 23, what am I going to be doing? And it's something that, as a kid, I don't really think anyone should be thinking about that at that age.
Yeah.
I never knew what I'd end up doing, but not in a cocky way, but I always thought it'd be okay. And I don't know why that was. I think it was just, I had this kind of innate ability within me. I had this drive, this tenacity. And I was super persistent at stuff, When I look back at like my school kind of history, teachers always say, he gets easily distracted but he needs to apply himself. I think it's typical of everyone, right?
Yeah.
That narrative flows in and out of school all the time. But I always knew that like whatever I did, I would be okay at, just because I just had this way of just making stuff work. And I think the way that marketing came about was, I love business. I generally love business, Back then, like my favorite shows and stuff like The Apprentice and all that type of stuff. But there were certain aspects of it that I didn't like. And I loved art. I loved art. I love advertising. I'm a very creative individual. And I think, just the aspect of art and business, marrying them together, marketing came about. I always wanted to initially get into advertising. That was what I wanted to do. So kind of campaign planning, management, campaign creation was really where I saw myself. But then when I realized actually, one, that's a niche within itself, and actually there's so much more to that. I didn't really want to kind of put the business aspect in a kind of cul-de-sac. I wanted to still do something that was quite business orientated. And I felt networking, marketing was like the most obvious route for me to go down. So that's why. And I remember just joining. When I went to uni and the lecturer saying our first lecture, 80% of you won't be in marketing, 5% of you will be recruiters, 5% you work in Lidl, and the other 10% you might as well get into marketing, but you're paying 60 grand for me to teach you how to bullshit. And I was like, so that's perfect. Like, that's exactly at least it's kind of being transparent about it. And I just felt that marketing for me it didn't feel so academic. It felt that actually there was a large amount of practical side to that. And I really, really enjoyed that. 100%.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. I think a lot of, especially entrepreneurs now, or like people that do have their own businesses, they really are able to kind of like just talk about their perspective and see just say how, and sometimes university can be helpful and also can't be helpful. I think a lot of people have told me that perhaps academically it hasn't been as useful as in the personal way. Like you said, like you just grow so much, you meet so many people, you get out of your comfort zone so much. And sometimes it opens a lot of opportunities in terms of like networking, making friends, making connections. And so like we briefly mentioned, and you also talked for a bit, that you worked, a bit in the corporate world before being an entrepreneur. So I think here I say, like you worked for Smirnoff, you worked for the tobacco company, Imperial Tobacco, you worked for Campus Industry, Doozy Vape Co. And so how was it working, within the corporate world before being an entrepreneur? Like how was your experience in that environment? Did you enjoy it?
I think, one is I have to be candid that in terms of, when I left university, like most people, you're so green to the world of work that actually you're not going to get much exposure to high level corporate, high level, just general whatever, right? But actually what I found was that I was quite quickly moved into, agencies, so through campus, and with that gained a lot of exposure. So as you mentioned, Diageo, so Smirnoff, Captain Morgan's, Guinness, Ciroc, and then quickly progress into Imperial Tobacco. And with Imperial, that was a different ball game because you had this huge company, Imperial, who owned, kind of RZA, these other cigarette brands. But I was working with their new innovation company. So their new innovation brand is called Fontaine Ventures. And essentially, I feel that's their kind of plan B when the tobacco industry gets snuffed. They're looking at, how can we kind of still sustain this brand? That was really interesting because I was then placed in terms of a kind of senior account director role with this company. I was mediating between clients and agency. But on top of that, you then start getting exposure to things like budgets, forecasting, phasing, all the stuff that they're trying to achieve for the next year. And you're seeing actually how they're taking a massive gamble trying to launch a new brand. Now, the brand that I was in charge of was a brand called Rion. for me, it was fantastic. You know, I was getting paid to go to festivals and all this different type of stuff, which is great. But in terms of what the brand did and where I look at where they were, their whole positioning was wrong. And I think it's important that, as I mentioned about being green, you have to understand that, yes, you're green, but you have to communicate to a client if you think something's not right.
Yeah.
No matter, you know, your level of, not even maturity, but level of exposure you've had within that world. And I recognised immediately that their positioning for that brand was totally off.
Yeah.
I really struggled with that because, yeah, you know, when you're working with a corporate, things don't move fast. Corporates are slow.
Yeah, definitely.
There's lots of high levels of sign-off. A lot of the time there's ulterior motives, not necessarily bad ones, but maybe it's financially driven, maybe it's target driven. And also, when you're working as a partner to a corporate, that sub-team, you know, my job was to make them look good, period.
Yeah.
That's all my job was, right?
Yeah.
So they have their own personal motivations, their own personal goals that they want to achieve within that.
Yeah.
And kind of, if you don't align with that, that can sometimes cause friction. And I remember that, you know, there are many occasions where my direct contact was just not playing, I don't even want to say not playing ball, but he just wasn't aligning himself correctly. And I had to raise that to his superiors and senior leadership.
Yeah.
And that in turn caused a lot of conflict. When I look at like my experience with Campus, you know, Campus was a great agency. Andrew Wood, who's the founder of that, they started off as a kind of print agency, so distribution magazines, and then built up a huge portfolio of student networks. And that's what made them so sticky to brands.
Yeah.
That was great because it felt like I hadn't left university and I was still getting paid to work.
Oh, yeah.
But I was also getting a lot of exposure to big brands, so the Suntory Group, which is Lucozade, Ribena, Orangina, Virgin Media, which obviously you know. So that gave me a lot of exposure, and it also gave me exposure in terms of what is it like to run a business, own an agency, and you know the do's and don'ts as such. I actually tried when I was at campus. So I created a product with another guy who was at campus. The name was ridiculous. I think it's called Scandal, and it was a fucking scandal. But anyway, it was a Instagram marketing automation tool. And I just felt that, you know, this tool could have been a value add for campus, and I remember pitching it to them, and you know they kind of had their backs up against about that. And now that I kind of have my own business and I see that, I can recognize why. And I think it's important to know that sometimes if people shoot down your idea, or if people aren't willing to take on your idea, sometimes it's not personal.
Yeah.
It might just be that there might be too much risk in terms of them onboarding an idea from me. Remember, I was an employee there, so you know it's something. If they're going to implement something that employees given them, and they're going to put that in front of clientele, then that kind of meant that I had leverage. So I think it's important to recognize that when you're going to try pitch ideas and whatnot, think about actually how that's going to be received from the top down compared to bottom up.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, I definitely gained a lot of experience, and I had a business before, for fuck's sake, a business called
Yeah.
And you know, we raised some capital on that business. It wasn't a lot. We raised 35,000 on that business, and there was myself, my brother, and another co-founder. And still to this day, it hurts a bit, but you know, the co-founder was meant to be my CTO, and essentially when it came to our term sheet, which is the sheet you get of obviously stipulated investment terms and whatnot, you know, he basically just backed down and said, you know, I can't deliver on this, and that was really painful because at that point I basically quit my role at campus. I was like, I've made it, you know, I've raised money, I'm out. And you know, everything comes crashing down. You're like, oh shit! Like I'm now without a job. I'm now without this business. The investors are pulling out, and that really humbled me, really quickly. But I think from there, that's where I jumped into Doozy. So you know, I was kind of looking around, thinking, okay, I now need a springboard to get me back. I know what I need to do in terms of this eat business isn't the one. Yeah. But there's so many learnings from this, and I'm going to relaunch it as for fuck's sake. So I, at that point, I done my notice period with campus. I went through maybe a month of kind of, you know, eating the Ben and Jerry's and whatnot, you know, the late nights, the tissues, all that stuff. And I ended up getting a job for Doozy, and Doozy was, you know, they're one of the largest vape companies, so vape juice manufacturer in the UK. It was a very small business. I think what appealed to me about Doozy was there was a real gap in terms of the skills that they didn't have, and the skills that I could attribute to them as a business. And also they were exciting in the fact that I had a lot of exposure in terms of event activation and that type of stuff. And they enabled me to not only capitalize on that, but also really run with in terms of, launching new products, launching new lines. I was responsible for, kind of Europe, the Middle East and Russia as well, and America. So, I went out to these regions, which was totally new to me. And it was a really, really exciting journey. I was there for maybe 2 years.
Oh, wow.
2 years? No, a little bit, maybe a year and a half. And I was able to, I actually hired Bradley into the company as well when he was in uni, finishing his uni. And it enabled us to learn so much, but also try so much as well.
Yeah.
I think, it sounds bad saying this, but I think any entrepreneur that wants to launch their own thing, you need to practice and try as much on someone else's time and someone else's capital before you try to do it yourself. Because we're bootstrap kings, like Brad and I, we're amazing at bootstrapping. But at the same time, bootstrapping is great. You get a lot of learnings from it, but capital is just speed. That's all it is agility that enables.
Yeah.
So we really tried a lot of different stuff, and I was running for fork's sake parallel whilst I was working at Doozy, loads of late nights. I had a big team on for fork's sake at that point. There were 15 people working on that.
Yeah.
So it was a massive team. We were on the Network Accelerator. So I was kind of living like a double life as such, like 9 to 5 going to work and afterwards trying to launch this business.
Yeah.
But all of that accumulated to kind of who I am today. But yeah, just like I said, just a side note that I have never had that much exposure in terms of that working world. I was only in full-time employment as such for 3 years, and then I left and did my own thing. I don't think that's a bad thing, because it just means that you're able to fail fast and fail quicker, and there's less kind of risk. But at the same time, I do wonder, what would it be like if I left campus and went to another larger agency and built up, skill and knowledge from that as well.
Yeah. And so like you said, you mentioned for fork's sake, and obviously now with Jensen and Jensen, it is really interesting that you've started, I think this is your second business with your twin brother Bradley. And so what is it like to be in business with family?
It's fucking tough, man. It's tough. No, I think going into business with family, the first thing you have to have is a mutual respect. And you have to have an understanding from the start, because you can be a business partner, but then you're also brothers, right?
Yeah.
And we're not designed to agree on everything.
Yeah.
At times we're gonna have conflict, but the respect comes in understanding, okay, where to draw the line in terms of potential that conflict, and not to cross that professional line. That's the most important thing. But we both got badly burnt in businesses before without each other, and I think that contributed to us actually coming together and being like, you know what, I know you, you know me. We kind of got each other's back in that sense. But to answer your question, going to business with family is not to be sniffed at. It is really, really difficult. A lot of the time, I'm not saying I dream up at night like, what would it be like if I had someone else still back? It's not like that. But I have a lot of friends that are in business with friends and whatnot, and I've been asked to kind of join businesses with other friends. And I think that can work really well if you've got two polar opposite people. I think where our challenge is that we're quite similar. In terms of our kind of attitude and thinking. And that can be a benefit at times. But also that can be a drawback. Sometimes you want someone who's quite stoic and quite considered in terms of thinking, and sometimes you want someone who's quite brash and out there, and those two complement each other. So but all in all, it works very well. It works very, very well. So.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And so, for speaking more about Jensen and Jensen, so what really stood out to us about Jensen and Jensen, besides your incredible work and success that you've had since 2018, is really how vocal that both you and your brother are about being a Black-owned business. And so, in your opinion, what mark do you really want Jensen and Jensen to make within this industry?
Sure. I think to be candid, Marketing, I'm in the agency world, right?
Mm-hmm.
The agency world is dominated by, 40-year-old white guys.
Yeah,
That's
definitely.
that is it. And I remember when we won, I think it was Leeds Digital Festival. We won an award there, and I think we were, one of the first or one of the very few ethnic business owners to win that award.
Yeah.
And Leeds has the second highest amount of agencies in the UK.
Yeah.
And we're so massively underrepresented, and I think that's, we have a duty. I don't know if I want to go as far as say duty, but we feel compelled to, just because we're surrounded by incredible ethnic people, business owners, entrepreneurs, people who work in corporates, just people who've achieved amazing things. And Brad and I are a fraction of those people. We don't even amount close to what they've done. So it's important for us to represent that, and speak about that. And again, like I said earlier, the problem I have in terms of diversity and all this stuff is it's not about inclusivity, because that's the wrong narrative. Inclusivity feels like you're hiring someone because you need to, and you're ticking that box. It's not about that. It needs to be about equality. I'll never hire someone just because I need a black person on my roster or something like that.
Yeah.
No, I'll hire someone based on talent. Who's the best person for the job. Ethnicity, not that it comes second to me, but it's not something I consider when I'm hiring for a role. I'm hiring in terms of someone who's talented. Now, that just depends on where I'm looking. Me, naturally, I have a lot of ethnic friends coming from London.
Yeah.
So actually the talent pool, the talent roster that I'm looking at is generally ethnic people.
Yeah.
But it can't, the conversation narrative can't be about inclusivity. It needs to be about equality. That's what it needs to be. Inclusivity feels and sounds like you're just including someone because you need to.
Yeah.
Because that's, that's the right CSR and all that type of stuff. It can't be like that. No one wants to feel like they're there because they have to be.
Yeah.
That's yeah. So for us, we're really vocal about that. We're really vocal about making sure that businesses don't hire people just because they're ticking a box. Because no one wants to be that individual.
Yeah.
It's just about recognizing that actually, diversity is important.
Yeah.
But it's not the most important thing. It's about giving talented people an opportunity which is equal and fair.
Yeah, thank you for that. That is a really important point to make, because I think it's only now that, like you said, a lot of companies are now trying to be more inclusive and more diverse. And so, speaking more broadly, since the Black Lives Matter movement in 2020, do you think that businesses are doing more to acknowledge racial inequalities?
I think, that's a really difficult topic, and I feel that businesses have, there's been a huge amount of frustration, and I think businesses have recognised that. I think it's important, again, that this isn't about ticking boxes. I'm just going to keep reiterating that, because I think, Black Lives Matter is an incredibly, it's a very complex movement, I typically don't really talk on that type of stuff, but it's a complex movement. It's something that has been ongoing for a while. This is just the catalyst that's brought it to light. And I think for businesses, it's important to recognize that it depends on the type of business. Some businesses want to be a faceless business, and as a result of that, they don't want to be deemed to, picking sides and whatnot.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that. It's just about, recognizing that actually you're doing something for those employees that may feel some type of way about this. It's a very, very, I still think it's so premature as well, which is quite weird to say because it's been ongoing for so long.
Yeah.
But it's something that businesses, need to recognize, need to address. But the manner in which they address it is not to be reactive. And what I mean by that is, when it happened, not for businesses the following week to put out a statement. Take some time to digest this, allow the water to kind of settle, speak to those people, go from the ground up. Because as soon as you say something immediately, and the tempo changes and whatnot, there's nothing worse than backtracking on what you said.
Yeah.
I'd rather not say something and say something well considered
Mm-hmm.
than rush to put out a statement that really holds no grounds or no basis.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think for businesses, it's just important that, you know, if that is something that directly applies to you, or you have employees that you think, you know, may be affected by that,
Mm-hmm.
then take an opportunity to speak to them in a private, personal manner,
Yeah.
and allow that to come from the employee. You know,
Mm-hmm.
a person will always reveal as much as they want to.
Yeah.
I don't think any business should be putting out a narrative about considering speaking to people, because no one wants the forced narrative put upon them.
Mm-hmm.
And when I look at, you know, a lot of my ethnic friends, when the Black Lives Matter movement was happening,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of them felt, you know, a massive kind of continental shift within the workplace and the dynamic
Mm-hmm.
and whatnot, and other people putting out a narrative on their behalf when they haven't said anything about it.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's wrong to not say anything. I don't think it's wrong to say something.
Mm-hmm.
I think just whatever you do, it needs to be well considered and come from a genuine place.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that's really important. Thank you for that. And once again, I think especially the last bit you say, like, whatever they do comes from like an actual like good place. Not once again, not because, for example, I think it was Blackout Tuesday when like a lot of people were just posting like a picture on Instagram, and it's just like I think a lot of people did generally care, but I think a lot of people were just doing it because to some extent it was trendy.
yeah, most
And this
definitely.
is, yeah, exactly, and this is also linked to unfortunately many other movements such as the Me Too movement, and that is definitely very important. And so overall, what advice would you say that you would give to, for example, like aspiring Black entrepreneurs, but also businesses that do want to generally, like small businesses such as Sing, for example, that do generally want to make a difference. They do want to create more opportunities for minority ethnic groups and also for Black-owned businesses. What would you say are things, once again, not like putting out a checklist, but what are things that businesses can do that you know from firsthand, and being a Black-owned business, knowing that something that a business can do that would make a difference?
Yeah, I think the first thing has to be recognition. You know, recognizing that actually it's not a level playing field. You know,
Mm-hmm.
once you recognize that, then you're actually able to act on it. I think for aspiring, you know, young Black entrepreneurs, the best thing they can do is invest in themselves. You know, in the end, results speak over everything. We're in a very difficult world right now where, you know, people don't get hired based off their name on a CV and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's not any secret that, you know, ethnic people generally have to work twice as hard to get those results. And you know, I can't sit here and say that's not going to happen. That will happen. That will continue to happen. But you know, I think when I look at, you know, my close friends that are doing great things, and when I speak to them about topics like this, for them, you know, the best thing they can do is to invest in themselves, you know, invest in what they're doing, invest in becoming the best they can, upskilling in any way, and really just let the results speak for yourself. And I know that's quite a cliche, quite a wishy-washy answer, but I think, you know, when it comes to this, there will come to a certain point where results, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And, you know, just be patient, you know, and recognize that this is just the way the world is, unfortunately. You can always do much more with your own platform. I think you can't go out with the perception of trying to change everyone's attitude, because you won't. And actually exerting that much energy into other people trying to change their attitude, when maybe it might be a cultural thing, it might be due to their age, it might just be that they're just downright ignorant. It's not only is it not your responsibility to try to change them, if you made the effort to and it didn't work, don't worry about it. Don't beat yourself up about that. You know, because for every person that's ignorant, there's so many more people that are accepting.
Yeah.
If you're able to change people's attitudes, then great. But I just think, you know, as a Black-owned business and for Black-owned businesses and for young ethnic entrepreneurs who want to be there, you know, you will always know what's right. You'll always know what's good. If you want to hire people, you want to hire your friends because you want to make your business more ethnic and more diverse, and do that. No one's going to stop you from doing that. But I also think it's just important to recognize, don't make that your whole agenda. You know, in the end, you're launching a business because you want success. It may be freedom, it might be financial driven, it might be you want to spend more time with your friends and family. So just make sure that you surround yourself with people that are going to allow you to achieve that. And if they're ethnic and if it's diverse, then great. If it turns out that they're not, then fair enough. Move forward, build your business to a point that you can do that.
Yeah.
You know, freedom allows that freedom allows people to be able to bring on more responsibility, bring people into the fold and whatnot. But don't pressure yourself into trying to do something, because again, it won't be authentic. People see right through that.
Definitely.
So it's just important to just do what you feel is right, really.
And so overall, like further elaborating on where you are with Jensen and Jensen, and even with your past businesses, what would you say has been one of your biggest challenges in being a Black-owned business, like, within the industry?
Wow. Biggest challenge. That's a difficult one. I think, one thing, I did a talk at WeWork for and Digital in Holborn for Black History Month. And one of the things that I said is I'm mixed race, right? So my mum's black, my dad's white. I recognize the position that I have compared to my friends who may be fully black, right? And I think one of the biggest challenges I faced was actually being so ignorant to that initially, you know, recognizing that actually I was getting opportunities because maybe my skin was a little bit lighter than other people. And that's a really tough pill to swallow, because all my best friends are black, you know, and like I said, Brad and I, you know, we're a fraction of what they've achieved, and I look up to them massively. So to be in an industry which is predominantly white and to recognize that I'm potentially getting these opportunities because I'm not fully black and whatnot was really, really tough. And it's quite a dark thing. You know, you go through quite a dark place in terms of when my friends have potentially come up and whatnot, and they'd be far more qualified to talk about certain things than I am. But people just have this immediate perception that they're lesser than who they are. Yeah. That's a really difficult thing, and that was a personal challenge that I faced. I think in terms of, you know, kind of a business challenge, nothing. You know, being candid, it's actually been the complete opposite. I'm a confident guy. It's almost a USP to me. I love being the only ethnic guy in a room full of white guys when it's an agency world, because actually, you know, one, I'm unsuspecting. They're suspecting less from me, and I always punch well above my weight, and I always deliver far better than other people. Yeah. So for me, you know, in terms of that, I capitalize on that. I thrive with that. I welcome that with gusto. So, you know, in terms of the agency world, no. But in terms of the personal side of going through the world of work, world of opportunity, networking, that's really where I recognize some personal challenges. And, you know, I'm very fortunate to have a great support network around me, with people who are very understanding, and I can be frank and candid when I'm speaking to them about these topics, and recognize that that's just the way the world is, unfortunately. You know, it's not pretty, it's not great, but the best thing we can do is just strive, and, you know, kind of, it's not about revenge, is the wrong word, but, you know, the phrase of success is the best revenge as such. Definitely. You know, the best way you can do is just invest in yourself, perform, keep performing, and keep focused. You know, keep focused. People are always going to talk. If it's not about, you know, diversity, if it's not about where you come from, your demographic, your upbringing, people are always going to find something to talk about. But as long as it's not distracting you, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, thank you for that. That is, it's really good that you are really candid and honest, because a lot of people don't really want to admit, like, personally that, that, like, they've had unconscious bias, or that, like, these things, or like they haven't really, since they haven't experienced, like, maybe racism just as bad, they just can't, some people don't want to admit to it, or like they only realize afterwards, and they don't want to admit to that it took a while for them to realize. So that is really, really important. And within the industry, like the marketing consultancy industry, or just like the business industry, how was it that you and your brother got the idea of starting Jensen and Jensen, and how did you guys kind of, let's say, manage to gain like a competitive edge? Like, what was your kind of idea to stand out, and what continues to be idea to like stand out in such a competitive industry?
Yeah, you're right. It's so competitive, and like we said before we started, the marketing world is a blessing and a curse. There's no barrier to entry. You know,
Yeah.
anyone can jump in this industry, and that's fine. I have no issue with that. J&J came about for Fork's Sake. We had a lot of people asking us to do marketing for them. You know, for Fork's Sake was bold and brazen as a brand within the name and whatnot, and people loved that. You know, it was slightly different, again, unorthodox, and we got asked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times to do marketing for individuals, and we said no. And once we recognised, actually, you know, we're people willing to pay us for this, and we're missing a trick. Then we kind of gave it a go. In terms of, you know, J&J, how that came about, we never wanted to launch an agency ever. Ever. If I'm honest, the industry kind of repulsive. I don't really like the agency world. Like, it's just not really for me. But I love, you know, like I said, I love business. I love creativity, and marketing is just the natural kind of route to go down for that. J&J kind of came about from that For Fork's Sake thing, and we started building up clients from really going out and being as candid as possible, going to really expensive bars and hanging around and trying to buy drinks we couldn't afford for ages, and almost bankrupting ourselves, honestly. And it came about because we were confident that we were different. You know, within these bars, we would probably be the only ethnic people in that. And we'd welcome that with gusto. And we were so confident that we would be able to build up a name for ourselves and go out and network. We were just talking to everyone and anyone. And we spent a year doing that. And really, you know, the kind of fruits of our labour even still coming through today. I have a lot of leads that come from Leeds, from people that I met over 2 years ago. In terms of, you know, kind of USP or something that makes us different, you know, you've got 2 young mixed race guys from London who speak different, who dress different. You know, we would go to meetings in air forces and tracksuits and whatnot. And you know, but we're able to articulate ourselves, you know, very well. We're able to hold a conversation. We're able to talk very passionately about what we're doing, about the marketing side. And I think that in its own right, it got people interested. You know.
Yeah.
Every time we do a pitch, we always get feedback, and you know, if we go for a tender or a pitch or something, there's 4 or 5 agencies. All the time they're just like, you guys are the most memorable pitch. You know, you're twins, you talk different, the passion's there. And I think that's something that we've never lost. You know, that came from going full circle, from being a young child, having to communicate having to communicate with adults on my mum's behalf. And it's crazy because when I think back, Brady and I didn't talk. We didn't really speak until about 3-4 years old. We only signed. So to be able to go completely the other way, you know, we're just very confident in what we're able to do. And we'll jump through as many hoops as we need to try and achieve our goal, really. I think that's the main thing is, whatever you do, people always have this idea that everyone has a great idea. They stick at it for, you know, a couple of days and then they're off. I always say, you know, the 3-day, 3-week, 3-month kind of rule in terms of, after 3 days, if you're still thinking about it, cool, start planning for the next 3 weeks. But after 3 weeks, if you're still thinking about it, then commit to it for 3 months. After 3 months, if you're still there and you're still like crazy about this idea, then just give it a go. You know, the best thing anyone can do in anything is just have tenacity and stick to it. It is so underrated. There's no shortcut. There's no secret. Now that I'm back in London, you know, I'm going to spend all of next year just networking again with no obligations, no commitments, just the notion that I want to network again, and hopefully that will serve me right for another 2 years to come. So
it seems that within this like episode, there's been a lot of like repetition in terms of really, I can see like your values, and please correct me if I'm wrong, it's really just focusing, working hard, like simple values that can go to anyone, like not listening to other people, just sticking to what you believe in. Once again, just working hard and standing out, and also being confident. And I think that is really, really important. Like that is definitely something that I can relate to. Like for me, I've always been like really, I have kind of always stood out in terms of like my personality. I've always like been quite impulsive. I've never been able to hold my tongue, which hasn't been great. But also just always kind of been like a tomboy, kind of like I've always liked football. Never really like, I mean, when now luckily we're in like kind of, let's say, a more advanced thinking world, but like back when I was a kid, it was weird that I didn't like skirts or dresses. But I think that is definitely something that's extremely important, to be proud of who you are. And really, and once again, just standing out, and yeah, like you said, like working hard, being focused, like standing out and being proud and confident of who you are, because everyone does have something special and different about them. It's just that most people are, let's say, too scared to show it. But I think that is the most important thing, that like everyone really does have a special like feature about themselves.
Most definitely, yeah. And I think, you know, when we were talking about when I was in school and whatnot, I never knew what I wanted to do, you know, at that point, but I just knew I'd be okay in some way.
Yeah.
And, you know, still to this day, I don't really know. But yeah, it's just about having that tenacity to stick to something and go for something. Because really, a lot of people, there's too much, particularly with the rise of social and whatnot, you know, self-gratification is just received way too easily.
Yeah,
people are constantly watching what other people are doing and not focusing on themselves. And that's a really, really bad thing. You know, discipline is so important. You need to be able to focus. Like I said, I'm very fortunate that, you know, Brady and I have each other, because we're able to spur each other on. And I have a huge amount of respect for, you know, solo entrepreneurs, because it's not easy. It's really difficult. And you know, everyone always sees, again, through social, they see the great times. Instagram's the highlight reel of life. It's not real at all. So no one really understands that. And I think once you start going through a kind of entrepreneurial journey, or even through a corporate journey as well, you really start to understand, actually, I just need to put time into this, time into my craft, and you'll slowly start to see those results coming through. But it's not going to happen overnight. And just be passionate about what you do. I'm not necessarily saying follow your passion, because I don't think following your passion is necessarily the right thing. You know, in the end, entrepreneurship is not glamorous. It's difficult.
Yeah.
So you don't want to dwindle the flame you have for your passion because you're not seeing results, you're not getting paid for it.
Yeah.
But do something that you have some innate skills in. So if that's communication, if that's art, whatever that is, you know, kind of take 2-3 of those skills, bring them together, and just run with it. Run with it. So.
And so, yeah, great. Thank you. That's very, very inspiring. And so to finish off this episode with a big question, what does the future hold for Jensen and Jensen, or perhaps more specifically, Myles Jensen?
For J&J, can I answer both?
Yeah, of course, definitely.
I'm still buffering on the Myles Jensen bit, but for J&J, I think, you know, we're in a great position. We've had a really strong growth year. We're recognizing where we want to be as a business. We're recognizing the importance of saying no to clients and understanding client maturity. It's not about clients that can pay us, it's about clients that can help us grow as a business. Niching down as a business, you know, kind of seeing what services we offer, recognizing which ones we don't. And I think, you know, as a business, just, you know, my personal mission for J&J is to break into America. That's my big kind of goal for next year, and hopefully that comes through, like I said, through that networking. I think for me, I'm still trying to work that out. What the future holds for me. I think I'm getting more to the point that I recognize what's important for me. COVID itself has taken, you know, a couple of years from us all. I think we all agree that time is just blowing past us. So, you know, number one is just taking every opportunity that comes. And that's not necessarily in terms of, you know, business or whatnot, but, you know, just doing what the hell I want, you know. If I want to go traveling. If I want to go see friends, go see friends. If I want to go to a gig or whatever it is, just doing that. Because actually, you know, time's not stopping for anyone, and more and more of these things, the world's kind of changing around us. So it's really important to make time for yourself and make time for those people that are important.
Great. So thank you so much, Myles.
Thanks for having me.
Definitely an amazing episode. So that is the end of today's episode with your host, Emmy. We really hope that this episode has been insightful and informative.